Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 drama. It's still all kicking off here ahead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo, confirmed by Helmut Marko, will be the third driver and potentially reserve driver for Red Bull next season. But also Sergio Perez appearing to apologise to Max Verstappen for his words at the end of the Brazilian Grand Prix. Does he fear that if he doesn't, his seat might be in jeopardy next season? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, this awesome image yesterday. I think apparently Lewis Hamilton kind of put this all together to celebrate Sebastian Vettel's career, something you wouldn't see a few decades ago, and the drivers certainly weren't friendly enough to do something like this together. So really cool stuff. Yeah, apparently Hamilton picked up the bill as well. But great image, of course, to see on Vettel's final ever weekend. But worthy of note, actually, was what was going on in the front here, I thought. Just as Hamilton tweeted an unforgettable night, and even this from Andrew Benson from the BBC, saying that from his understanding, Lewis Hamilton this is a suggestion of his, he brought it all together, and he also picked up the bill as well. So really cool stuff. Now, of course, with this image itself, this is another angle here. We can see Max Verstappen's at the back on the right-hand side. Perez is in the front. Thought it was just kind of funny and interesting in a way after the events of the last few days and last weekends that, it's Hamilton and Perez next to each other here. Hamilton's got his arm around his shoulder being like, look, Sergio, next season when I'm charging through the field, maybe you don't hold me up like you used to back in the day. And maybe Perez is going to think a little bit differently after what happened last weekend with Verstappen, and they're not exactly next to each other in this image, although, of course, you can't really read too much into that. Of course, they just put this together last minute. So before we speak about the Perez Verstappen drama, I wanted to talk about this practical confirmation from Red Bull and Helmut Marko, who has said that yes, Daniel Ricciardo will be their third driver next season. That's been the rumours the last couple of weeks. Will Ricciardo go to Mercedes? Will he go to Red Bull as their kind of third reserve driver? Looks like Red Bull is his destination. Now, it's kind of funny because he was being asked about, Checo, what's going to happen next year? What if Perez gets dropped for the whole Monaco potential crashing incident or whatever? And Marko says, look, who else could we bring in? And the media say, what about Daniel Ricciardo? And he says, no, it's not going to be Daniel. He's going to be our third driver. So they kind of baited him into that one. And this was the quote. Ricciardo will be our third driver. We have so many sponsors. We have to do show runs and the like. So of course, he's one of the most high profile and best suited to that type of stuff. So definitely interesting. But it seems like he's going to be their third driver as is described. So the interesting thing is, apparently Liam Lawson will remain as the official reserve driver. So third driver doesn't necessarily mean reserve driver. Kind of weird in a way that Ricciardo was, he didn't want to be the second driver at Red Bull when Verstappen was there. So he comes back as the third driver a couple of years later, and arguably he's the fourth driver because apparently Liam Lawson is still going to be the reserve driver for Red Bull and AlphaTauri, and Ricciardo will be used for show runs and marketing stuff. So he's kind of now the second reserve driver. I don't really know. Realistically, if they were to have an instance where they needed a reserve driver to step in, they probably, you would think, would choose Ricciardo, right? But honestly, who knows at this point? So yeah, Daniel's there as kind of like a marketing guinea pig for Red Bull. And look, if he thinks that's his best chance of getting back on the grid in 2024, maybe it's a good step. I guess he can still be around the paddock and with the teams and stuff. And we did wonder whether Mercedes or kind of Red Bull would be the destination. Looks like it's going to be Red Bull, right? And it does raise some questions about the whole Perez situation and whether having Ricciardo there as the additional driver puts a bit more pressure on Perez to make sure he still plays nice with Max Verstappen that maybe was under question and threat a few days ago that may not be the case any longer. So what do you guys think about this? Ricciardo to Red Bull, not officially confirmed as of recording, but look, he basically did say it outright that this is going to be a thing once again, Red Bull Ricciardo. But as I say, he left as the second driver and he rejoined as the second reserve driver. I don't know if that's the way forward for him, but look, he thinks it can work for his return in 2024 and probably needs to find his passion again a little bit, which I think he talked about losing a little bit over the last several months. Let's dive into this Perez drama. Thought this is interesting from Red Bull Racing. I don't really have an issue with this tweet, of course. Look, they just tweet out the Yas Marina circuit, got a lot of likes, but a lot of traction as well, because it was only earlier in the day where they were talking about, social media toxicity and abuse that comes to drivers and to fans and stuff. And then they do this tweet, which of course is going to rile up some controversy. And I don't really think there's a problem with that, but I just think it is semi-interesting, at least, the fact that, they tweet this out and earlier in the day they're talking about making sure they shut down on toxicity, and then they're kind of inviting it with a tweet like this, you could argue, but I don't really think it's too much of a big deal. But these were the words from Perez to Verstappen after the race in Brazil. Quite strong words. Not the words that Leclerc said to Norris, right? He's like, he's a beep or whatever, right? After pushing him off track. It wasn't one of those heat of the moment emotional words. It was all I don't know. It seems to me that this is almost words that Perez has thought in his own mind before, and in an emotional moment after Verstappen didn't let him through at the end of the Grand Prix, then those words come out. It wasn't just offensive terms to describe someone. It was more like an actual thought out kind of criticism of Verstappen's character, you could say. It shows who he really is. And even after the race, right? I mean, even after Perez had calmed down a bit, this was a quote that he said after the race and saying that, look, if Max has 2 championships, they are at least in serious part down to Perez's help over the last couple of seasons. So we did wonder what the response would be to this. What would Red Bull do about it? Of course, we saw their statement yesterday where they seems to shift the blame onto Verstappen's engineer for not telling him before the final corner to swap positions. Whereas when we looked at the radio, it was rather clear that he told him into turn 6 way before the end of the lap. So he had plenty of time to give the position back if he wanted to. But look, he did not, and clearly didn't for his own reasons. If he didn't give the position back to Verstappen because it was too late called in the lap, he would have said at the end of the Grand Prix, I would have done it, but I didn't have time. You guys should have told me earlier. That's not what he said. He said, look, I gave you my reasons. I'm not giving those positions back. And Perez obviously said what he said after the race. Now, they are trying to diffuse things, I'm sure, internally, but also from a media perspective, because it's a surprise, to be honest, that the team that's won both championships are the team in the most disarray, let's say, at the end of the season. So Perez has admitted that he regrets a lot of the things he said and is pretty sorry to Verstappen for the words that he uttered, which I suppose makes sense. They're teammates. There might not be too much to read into it. But just nonetheless, after Red Bull come out with their statement defending Max, and now Perez is coming out publicly and saying, sorry to Max, it's like, who actually is the victim here at the end of the day? It's probably not Max Verstappen, but maybe you guys disagree. So as Perez says, obviously F1, a very emotional sport, and there's no other sport where you can speak yourself live, and it's only in F1 where this happens. So a lot of emotions going through at that time. I obviously regret things that I said after the race because, I'm back with Max in the relationship that we used to have. We are both on the team. Everyone is ready to move forwards. So, look, we'll see about that. Of course, it's PR speak. They're speaking to the media. They're not going to say, our relationship's still a bit fractured. I'm not really sure if I like this guy at the end of the day. I don't know if I want to stay in this organization for too much longer. He's not going to say that. He's going to say, our relationship is now completely healed after last weekend, and there's no issues at all to the end of the season. So, look, you talked about there was some lack of clarity within the camp, going on to say everyone was put in a very difficult situation there within Max, within the team, myself included. So, interesting, because Max he was put in a difficult situation to a certain degree. They told him to give the position back. He had apparently told them back in Mexico that that's not going to happen and there's no way he's going to give a position to Perez. So, whatever the circumstances. So, I guess Verstappen was in a difficult position given that situation before, and Red Bull didn't handle it the best. But obviously, Perez is also in a tough spot because he was asked to let Max by, expecting the position to be returned. He admits we could have handled the situation better. We're obviously going to learn from it and do things differently in the future. That's the way it should be. Every team in the paddock is learning. Luckily, it was just the last 100 meters of the lap that I found out he wasn't going to give me back the position. It was obviously a bad feeling. Maybe he's implying there that if he'd found out before the last 100 meters that Max wasn't going to give it back, he'd have said even worse stuff on the radio. I don't know. But the words he said were during the cool down lap. It wasn't like heat of the moment type stuff when you're in the middle of a race situation. The race was over, and obviously it's still pretty heated in the cockpit there. But you know what I mean. The race was over when he said those words. Going on to say, I hope we're able to put this behind us. I think we are. And yes, my priority is to have a good environment to work in, be able to trust my teammate and to trust my team. That is my priority. So a really interesting statement I thought from Perez here, kind of apologizing to Max. It's understandable that he's going to apologize for those comments. But just still, I don't know what your thoughts are about this, because it seems to me that Red Bull, maybe as expected, have defended their number one driver, even though not explicitly, publicly. And then Perez has also come out and kind of apologized to Max. And Max hasn't really, given more information or details as to why he did what he did. He hasn't apologized for not giving it back to Perez and saying, it was a heat of the moment thing. I should have given the position back. So, I don't really understand this, right? It's almost like Perez and Red Bull acting as if Verstappen is kind of the victim in this whole situation, whereas it does seem a little bit different from a public perspective. And maybe this is just further indication that, Perez has been told, look, get on board again here, mate, or we're not going to have the relationship going forwards, right? So you better apologize to Max publicly, especially with Danny Rick coming in as the third driver of the team, and therefore maybe there's some more competition for Perez to retain that seat going forwards. His contract, of course, ends at the end of next season, or the end of 2024, actually. He's got 2 more seasons. So, I don't know. I think we could have handled it better, says Perez. Pretty spicy stuff, I thought, nonetheless. And maybe part of it is because, look, he doesn't want to go down the rabbit hole of this kind of Monaco crash. We've seen kind of Verstappen potentially comment on this. We've seen Sainz comment on this. We've seen the telemetry data over the last few days indicating that definitely looks a little bit suspicious. And, maybe Perez just wants to ensure, if I just apologize to Max and we move on from this, we won't have to keep going down the route of, well, why did Max do this? Why did he do that? And therefore looking at this Monaco crash in more detail, because I don't think Perez really probably wants to look back on this moment moment too much with any more scrutiny than there already has been. So yeah, definitely intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. And just to finish out with this, I thought was really cool. So Norbert Vettel, Sebastian Vettel's father, is at the paddock this weekend, and brought in Seb, surprising him with his original race suit from like his first ever race that he did, which I thought was a really touching moment as well. But very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.